This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon. So this is what Build Back Better looks like. The Democrats have run America and the White House for 12 of the last 16 years. The executive branch, which does all the work, reflects the wishes and the whims and the personnel of the blue team. This land might be our land, but this government is theirs. The Bible says that by your fruits you will be known. The fruits of Build Back Better, the governing philosophy of the blue team, can be seen in Asheville, North Carolina. They can be seen in Maui, Hawaii, and they can be seen in Springfield, Ohio. Build Back Better is a tale of three cities. And the lesson in all three cities is that a vote for the blue team, a vote for Build Back Better, is a vote for your replacement. You can't afford 4 more years of this government, and you would not survive it. Some communities will be destroyed when the third world and its people and its mentalities are imported to their doorstep. If it could happen in Springfield, Ohio, it could happen in Southfield, Michigan. None of us are exempt. Some communities will be destroyed by fires of unknown origin. They'll be crippled further by a government response that offered too little and came too late. If it could happen in Maui, it could happen in Mayberry. And some communities will be left to rot after natural disasters. If it could happen in Asheville, it could happen in Nashville. No community is beyond the reach and the incompetence and even the aggression of the federal government. Let's talk about what Build Back Better looks like in Springfield. I always thought it was stupid and a mistake to talk about Haitians eating dogs and cats. Yeah, it was an attention getter, but at what cost to credibility? Talking about the family pet was actually taking the easy way out. That Donald Trump with that route says something about the shaky ground of male authority in 2024. For Trump to make the case against illegal immigration in Springfield, he has to do so over the objection of Eve. Eve is shorthand for the suburban woman who values nothing more than her self-image of niceness. She saw a Bible quote on a pillow once, and it said something about taking in a stranger. And now all of the world and all of public policy should be based around that. And so this is what your entire community will do. You will take in the stranger, or about 20,000 of them, because that's what's nice. And aren't we nice people? And don't we want our wives and our daughters and our mothers to think of us as nice guys? We're so nice, we're killing ourselves with kindness. God's first question in the Bible was, Adam, where are you? Adam and Eve had just eaten the forbidden fruit. They were trying to hide from God. God calls out to Adam, to the man, to show himself. That's when he sees that Adam is clothed. And he's clothed because he's ashamed. And he's ashamed because he had one job. Don't eat from the tree. And he couldn't do it. And he ate from the tree because he followed the woman rather than the word. It's a pattern men have been repeating since Genesis 3. Illegal immigration today in 2024 is its greatest manifestation. Adam, where are you? Will you defend the character of your community? Or do you not have permission? Trump didn't feel he could approach the Springfield issue as the protective man doing what's right, even if it's not popular. Instead, he appealed to the one authority that a woman might honor, the family pet. They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs. Overlaying it all is a harsh reality. A man is not at liberty to defend his community unless he can first cite the defense of Garfield and Lassie. The ancient model, man protecting his turf, doesn't work anymore. Now he has to run it by his wife. This struggle dates back to our earliest stories as a species. Trump in the modern era has to consider not only what women will tolerate, but what they'll vote for. And so his argument only works if he can cite a higher authority than the masculine need to protect. But Trump was at least trying to make that argument, even if he had to dress it up a little bit. But if you personally, the guy I'm talking to, the guy who's listening to this, if you can't say that the people are the problem in Springfield, then you can't speak the truth. If fear of racism and sexism and the old tired labels of the left, if that still holds you back, then you will be held back and you will lose and your kids will suffer. So no pressure. Do what you want. Do what feels right. But just know it matters. Speaking of your kids, How's your kid doing at school? Perhaps a better question, how's your kid's school doing? Not great, right? And the younger the kid, chances are the worse off they are, especially if they were affected by those COVID years. Now imagine a bunch of new kids arrive. Through no fault of their own, they haven't had much schooling, if any, but now the teachers have to catch them up. Now the bar is lowered. Now excellence is crowded out and pushed down into the normal classroom. There's no room for accelerated curriculums or anything like that. The kids left behind go remedial along with the new arrivals. Before long, remedial is the norm, normal is the rarity, and excellence is unthinkable. It's not discussed, it's not sought out, it's not celebrated, it's not even allowed to survive when it does exist, because equity demands that excellence be snuffed out when identified. Genius will be kept a secret like a guest on the Underground Railroad. Once upon a time, a kid from Springfield, Ohio could end up anywhere in the world. Well, now Port-au-Prince has come to Springfield. We're told it's necessary to build back better with foreigners because the American worker is too opioided, too drugged up to hold a job. That the opioid crisis started in the doctor's office and continues today on the southern border is never mentioned. Scan the headlines about Springfield. If all you read was mainstream news, you would think that poor little Springfield was dying and would be dead, if not for the 20,000 overnight arrivals from Haiti. This is what they do, and this is what they think of you. Build Back Better brings equity by bringing America to an equitably poor and dysfunctional status, just like the third world they're importing to the country. Springfield is what happens when the American people are devalued and treated as the problem. Now, notice, there can be no criticism of the Haitian arrivals in Springfield. All you are allowed to say is that the community was dying and that these people saved it. But it's perfectly fine to say that the men are too opioided, no one wants to work, everyone's smoking too much pot. You can say that. You can say we can't find workers. You can say that the American ethic has fallen down on the job. But the only thing you're allowed to say about the Haitians who came to Springfield is that they saved the place. Does any of this strike you as truthful? Let me ask that another way. If 20,000 Haitians are the answer, what exactly was the question? How to keep some factory running at 3 shifts per day? I'm sorry. That's not good enough. I'm sorry. I value my countrymen over your golf buddy and perhaps your donor. And I know our community is stronger when your golf buddy employs our neighbors rather than importing people just to lowball them. People whose kids will be a drag on schools and social services that normal people have to rely on. So no, it's not by damn nearly about the cats and dogs in Springfield. The end game there is the degradation of the American worker, his replacement with the foreigner. And it's funny, it works both ways nowadays. First, they send your job to Mexico and China. Then they allow opioids to be imported across the border. Now, what few factories are left, they claim they need foreigners to work them because the men are too drugged up and beaten down. All the while, the government's visible hand was guiding the wheel to engineer each and every one of those results. This was done to us, not for the Haitians. As always, it's the kids who will suffer and be made to figure it out. Always is. Maui is what happens when people want your land. Remember Maui? Remember that fire last August that killed 100 people, burned down a lot of property, most of which hasn't been rebuilt? It might take years. Might take a decade. But the end game in Maui is the replacement of native Hawaiians with wealthy part-timers. Think The Rock, Oprah, Mark Zuckerberg, Barack Obama. Well, there's not enough room for all the people like that who have the status and have the money to do it to be there. Before Hawaii was a state, it was a kingdom. It was forced into the Union at gunpoint, and we've enjoyed tasty pineapples at good prices ever since. Michiganders know what it's like to be displaced from our homes by a bad economy. Now imagine having that home torched on your way out. Now imagine being pushed out of what's closer to a nation for your people than it is a state. This is force majeure carried out with human hands. To this day, the Maui fire is considered accidental. But just as with Nashville, it wasn't the thing, it was the thing behind the thing that's the problem. Look, I know the media has taught you that every time there's a fire, every time there's a hurricane, it must have been human action, the climate crisis, right? And so your taxes need to go up. Fires happen, hurricanes happen. These things can't always be controlled. But what can always be controlled is what happens next. And that's where the humans, whose job it is to protect the homeland, fell down on the job. The slow response to the Maui fire allowed the damage to be more widespread than it would have. It seemed as if the point of the whole thing was to inflict maximum pain on normal people who could not afford to build back better. And that last word, better, is meant to describe life in Maui without the normal people. And Maui Built Back Better means Hawaii won't be controlled by natives and just enjoyed by visitors as it used to be. It'll be controlled by visitors, and natives will hardly have any access at all. See, when the people of Michigan move because the economy's not working out here, we're not given refugee status. We're not given debit cards and hotel stays paid by the government. More often, we get to point B with the car that barely got us there and the clothes on our backs, and we figure it out from there. There's no CBP One app for Americans. No status that entitles us to the best of what America has to offer. And those are the enticements that are offered to illegal immigrants. When we move, we just have to figure it out. We know not to expect or ask that Uncle Sam will grab for our hand. And honestly, we just as soon go on without him. But with the immigrant, Uncle Sam is hand in glove. They only get the best of what America has to offer. This isn't some kind of mistake or miscalculation by the regime. It's their statement on who matters. Illegals are being enticed to America with blood money, with ill-gotten gains, with the spoils of people who worked honestly for theirs and tried to play by the rules. This is done to demoralize you, and if you are demoralized, congrats, that means it worked. Because no matter how angry you think you are right now, no matter how much you've lost in this deal, when the time comes, your wife is still going to talk you into amnesty. It's the nice thing to do, remember? And so the seeds of your own ruin are planted inside your own home. The call is coming from inside the house. When that happens, and when amnesty is granted, America becomes a one-party state forever. That's why millions of people are being imported right now. You might expect that to be held against the ruling party and hurt them in an election. All they need to do is get one more round of amnesty, and there's no more elections to worry about. When America becomes a one-party state, it will look a lot like Asheville. By all accounts, Asheville is home to and run by deep blue Democrats, the very people who did vote for and subscribe to Build Back Better. Perhaps they let themselves laugh when towns like Springfield were overrun. Perhaps they shook their head in sympathy when Maui was hit by an unnatural disaster. Tough break could have happened to anybody. But when the hurricane came, they realized that Build Back Better wasn't just something that happened to other people. It was happening to them and their kids, and yes, to their pets. Before the storm hit, a bear climbed 50 feet into a tree in North Carolina. He didn't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blowed. On the other hand, Alejandro Mayorkas, head of Homeland Security, missed the signals that the bear caught. FEMA was caught flat-footed. When Mayorkas did finally speak on Asheville, he only had bad news. Sorry guys, FEMA's low on cash. Over the last 2 years, FEMA spent more than $1 billion to bring immigrants to America and relocate them to places like Springfield. But now, after an unnatural disaster, after a hurricane, the people in Asheville are being told they can get up to $750, but only if they really, really need it. You know, money's tight these days. Money flows freely to Ukraine without even much discussion. It flows freely to Israel. It's viewed as an ancient and sacred obligation. America's never too broke to build back better in Ukraine. And it's never too broke to import the third world to Aurora, Colorado. But when Americans need help, Uncle Sam has T-Rex arms, like a man on a date hoping the woman will reach for the check. This is the final phase of Build Back Better. This is life in a one-party state. The people right now in places like Asheville have two choices, and they're both bad. One, they can do what the media has been doing with the economy for 4 years. They can disregard reality and pretend that things are all good. A father in Ohio actually held a press conference. He said he wished his 11-year-old son had been killed by a white man instead of an illegal immigrant, so a story couldn't be co-opted by the evil, scary Republicans on the right. Imagine this. I know it's not easy to think about, but imagine this. Your son is dead. And not just dead, killed. And your concern in that moment is party politics? Your concern is not doing anything that would ever help Donald Trump, including say that your son deserved better than an early grave. You can't imagine it. Your mind rebelled that entire time because this type of evil can only be taught. There's nothing natural or human about it. I can't get you there in a few seconds. It would take brainwashing. Option 2 is to tell the truth, even if it hurts. Reality is working overtime against Kamala Harris right now. The incompetence that's been the hallmark of the Biden administration is not just hurting all of America anymore, it's crippling the Harris campaign. But the problem is our habits determine our actions. We become what we pretend to be. So now Biden, all these years later, he doesn't know any other way to be. You can't just be incompetent for 4 years and then figure it out. So when Biden says he and Harris are reading from the same sheet of music, he's right. And that sheet of music is Build Back Better. And first, that means you got to wreck the place. As a one-term president, Biden doesn't have to worry anymore about election strategies or timing. He's still doing the job he was given 4 years ago. It's Harris who now needs to pivot, but Biden has left her with nowhere to go. The one question the media won't ask Harris is, why aren't you president right now? Right this second? We see Joe Biden spending a lot of time on the beach in Delaware. Why don't we just send the old man off to pasture? You're the girl boss. You're the Yas queen. Why aren't you president right now? They won't ask Harris that question, and they definitely won't ask Biden that question. Because if you asked either one of them, some piece of the truth might emerge. Harris isn't president right now because Biden knows she can't be. In his own mind, Biden probably even thinks that by being a bad president, he's being a good team player. Look, you don't wake up from a 4-year slumber just completely competent and ready to go. You don't go from Biden to Ron DeSantis overnight. So if Harris were president right now, she'd be fumbling and bumbling and failing. 4 months of President Harris might have saved America from 4 years of President Harris. The final face of Build Back Better is when the ruling class doesn't need to pretend that you matter anymore. When they don't need to appeal to the center by sounding reasonable. When they feel no need to reach across the aisle. You know, these days you have to check that a story is even legit. Between AI and SNL and the absurdity that's become commonplace in our news, you can't always tell if something is real or if someone's just having a laugh. I was talking a few podcasts ago. I got a thing from a friend. The Detroit News was selling month subscriptions for 10 cents. I thought it was Patriot Post Girl having a laugh. It turned out it was real. This video I'm about to play, unfortunately, is also real. It shows government officials talking about the federal response to Asheville.
Thinking about preparedness and how you said, LGBTQIA people and people who have been disadvantaged already are struggling. They already have their own things to deal with. So you add a disaster on top of that. It's just compounding on itself. And I think that is maybe the why of why we're having these discussions, is because it isn't being talked about. It isn't being socialized. We're not paying attention to this community. Thank you so much. Maggie.
Thank you. There are a couple of things that are intersecting in my mind here. One of them is the culture of emergency management as an organization, as an industry in the United States specifically, not abroad. The shift that we're seeing right now is a shift in emergency management from utilitarian principles where everything is designed for the greatest good for the greatest amount of people to disaster equity. But we have to do more, right? And so this topic is intersecting, I think, with a number of other topics where we have to look at policies and understand to what extent they have disadvantaged communities that had less assets, communities that had pre-existing vulnerabilities in accessing disaster-related recovery supports.
Rather than get off the Zoom call and get to work actually helping people, These officials decide to make a hierarchy of who should get the help and in what order. It may come as a shock that on top of the list are gays and lesbians. One official said, "We should focus our efforts on LGBT people," noting that these people were also doing pretty bad before the storm. Another official says, "FEMA is about disaster equity." So good luck building back better. Unless you're, on the list as some kind of gay person, you might not get the help you need. I'm old enough to remember a world where the hierarchy in cases like this was women and children first. If there's a modern version, it's women, children, and pets first. Now, in 2024, Asheville, gay dudes are at the top of the heap. Don't believe what the feminists tell you. It's still a man's world out there. At the end of a one-party state, there's no more pandering to different factions of the party. There's only VIP treatment for the select few who are deemed useful. So right now, that's the LGBT, and that's the illegal immigrant. So whether they're gays who don't procreate or Haitians who do procreate in great numbers, it's not people like you or me. We're last on the list, and we might be on a different list entirely. If you don't know personally that you are a VIP right now, you're not one. Under Build Back Better, there's no better show in town. There's no one to run to when disaster strikes. When the immigrants overrun your city, you'll be forced to say that they saved the place. When the torch burns your city, you'll be forced to flee the place. When a hurricane hits your city, disaster equity and not conditions on the ground will decide who gets what. This is Build Back Better. Nothing is stable. Nothing is certain. Nothing is secure. The only thing you know when you wake up each morning is that things can always get worse.